You're listening to Neurodivergent Mates. Hello and welcome to another episode of Neurodivergent Mates. I'm your host, Will Wheeler, and today I'm joined with my special guest, Anthony Tucker, who's going to be talking about supporting healthy coping and functioning strategies. Tuck, what's going on, my friend?
Hello, mate. How are you today?
Yeah, can't complain. It was actually interesting. Tuck and I were, Tuck's from Adelaide, or Radelaide, they like to call it down there. Am I right, mate?
Have to leave that one alone.
Oh, really? You can't leave that one alone?
Yeah, I think we've banned that one. I think we're over that one.
Okay, because the funniest thing about it, we're the only people who seem to call it Radelaide are people from Adelaide themselves.
Yeah,
so that was an interesting one when I heard that. But no, all good. It was actually interesting because before we started the podcast, we were talking about where Tuck's from. And we'll talk a little bit about the football as well. So Tuck's a Port Adelaide supporter, and we're just talking about a little bit about how much Adelaide has changed. So for those of you who don't know, I used to have to do a little bit of work down in Adelaide, and I spent a little bit of time in Port Adelaide there, and just how much it's grown. And, it's been quite interesting. But how do you reckon the boys went this year?
Well, not too bad, mate. Like, it's been a challenging year. It was a really close season. I know you follow a bit of the AFL, so it was like one of those things.
Yeah.
One week you're cheering, the next week you're crying, and Port Adelaide are parochial. So one week we love our team, the next week we've sacked the coach and we've moved out. But by the end of the season, it was okay. We finished third, I think. So
yeah, you didn't do too bad. Hopefully next year's the year, right? It always seems like
sick of saying that, Will. I'm so
I reckon you would be. I reckon you would be. You know what? It's funny, right? Because obviously, so I'm. Like I said before, was brought up with Geelong. My father's from Geelong, so I was always like, you got to be a Geelong supporter, right? But I obviously lived up in Brisbane, right? And, obviously the Lions were quite a good team back in the day. And it was Port Adelaide who knocked them off in the end.
It was. You were 2004, a very good year.
Yeah.
But then your other team in 2007 are the source of much of my PTSD when you beat us in the grand final by, what was it, 100 and too many points in the grand final.
Yeah. But it's just one of those things. But I think it just goes to prove how much when your team does win the grand final to savor that memory so much, because you don't know when you're going to get it again.
Come around again, yeah.
But you know,
unless you're a Penrith supporter, of course. When you're a Penrith supporter, it's every year, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh my God. Do not get me started with Penrith. I like Penrith when they weren't as good, but now it's just like
the underdog thing.
Yeah, totally. You just want to see someone knock them off. And it will happen. It always happens at some point. It's just a matter of when. But you know what? Talking about all this heartache and that with the football, I think it probably works well into supporting healthy coping and functioning strategies. What do you reckon, my friend?
This is where you have to learn it. Through the fire is when you're learning coping strategies.
Totally, mate. Totally. But look, before we do get started, I'll do just a little bit of housekeeping if there's anyone who hasn't listened to us before. So if you haven't already done so, please subscribe, like, and follow all of our social media pages. We're available on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, X, Twitch, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And please go check us out wherever you listen to your podcast. Please subscribe, rate the podcast. The more you can do that, the more the podcast gets out there through the algorithms. Also, if you haven't already done so, please check out the work we're doing with Neurodiversity Academy. You can check us out at neurodiversityacademy.com. Also, on today's program or show, whatever you want to call it, I'll just do a little bit of a disclaimer. So, warning, some discussions may be triggering. If you need help, please reach out to a loved one or call emergency services. We are not doctors. This is a space for sharing experiences and strategies. And if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments section of the social media pages you might be watching the live version from. So we're currently on the live version at the moment. And look, if I know there's a little bit of a delay through the live version and all that for safety reasons. If we get it in time, we'll try and answer those questions as best as we can. Tuck, you ready to rock and roll, my friend?
Sure thing.
You're born ready, right?
Buzzer's ready. Buzzer is ready.
All right, cool, man. So easy question first. Well, it might not be that easy. Who knows? But look, tell us a little bit about yourself, mate.
Yeah, well, I love talking about myself. Not really. I'm. Where do I start? I grew up in a rural area of South Australia, like just past Adelaide Hills. Like my family were generational farmers, so I grew up there, and had a pretty good life out there on the farm. But it had its challenges also. Like my dad, he's a great guy, but he had his own challenges around alcohol misuse, which led to him and Mum divorcing when I was quite young, and with all the stuff that brings. So that was it there. And because I was on a farm, I got shipped off back in the day. I got shipped off to boarding school. So that was another thing that you kind of learn.
What type of farm was it, out of curiosity?
Oh, we had a bit of everything. We had cereal crops, and then also beef cattle and sheep as well.
Did you have to deal with much drought?
From when I remember growing up, we lived right on the Finnis River, so which is I think from memory this carries the second largest amount of water of rivers in South Australia, like next to the Murray. So we in wintertime, sections of our property were quite flooded. So, but yeah, we did have to. It's very seasonal. Like if anything's going to bring you drama in your life, be a farmer. It's like
it's a hard road. Like I've watched some things about farmers, and like at the moment the farmers are doing quite well, which is really good. But for years those poor people have gone through heartache just to do what they love.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's true. And we were like, we went back on the farm a little bit. Like my brother and I, like there was only the two of us in our family, but we were the last kind of generation of farmers. It all got sold. It was just so too difficult to do. So from there for me, I was I've done the only thing that I have more of other than professions has been hobbies in my life. I've tried and done a bit of everything, but I've done everything. I was a soldier, I was a farmer, I was a touring muso, I was like owned a small business, and then life led me, put one foot in the other, learn from one thing and go on to the next, and that's where I ended up where I am today. I work for Mission Australia today, and I came in, started work for Mission, what they call a community rehabilitation support worker, which is someone that does case management support for people that have got psychosocial disabilities. And because of my management and business experience, I've kind of moved on a little bit from there and in a management role there. I'm the area manager, so I look after all our AOD and mental health programs for Mission in Adelaide Metro and Southern SA, which is really, really cool. I love it.
That's cool. That's cool. Just out of curiosity, you were saying that you went to boarding school, right? And how was boarding school for yourself? Was that a great experience, or was that quite difficult, or was there any struggles?
Yeah, it was a challenge for me. And as we'll get on to, like most of my life, I didn't feel like I fitted in a lot of places. I was always going, why does it seem so much easier for everyone else? And so boarding school wasn't much different than that. I got there, and I wanted to be accepted and included and part of stuff. And I had pretty good friendships, but it just I was always the outer of the inner. And so it was a challenge. The boarding schools came with a fair level of bullying and things as you go, especially as you're a young kid going in there, like straight out of primary school. I was at 12 or 13, moved away. My parents had just divorced. My dad was remarrying, and there's so much kind of complexity around it, and you kind of felt like you just felt like it's another thing, you know. It was a challenging time. Like, it's one of those things you look back on and go, oh, you have some good memories from it, but there's also some stuff in there you go, you know, crap, that was a bit hard.
Yeah, totally. So, and you know, I think sometimes, as harsh as it sounds, sometimes that shapes us into the people that we are today.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's the challenging parts that, and you know, I'm assuming as well, probably with a lot of the stuff that you're doing now, you know, some of that could have been trauma or whatever that you've taken from those days in boarding school, and you know, your parents break up, all of that.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. Like I did lots of different things, and with work and with my personal life, and just always felt like there was just something not quite right. Like I had all those things, and I'm sure a lot of people that are listening struggled with the feeling like, you know, that negative messaging you get from a lot of stuff. You know, you don't fit, and so as almost a side note, I was down the street with my other half the other day, and we bumped in, completely different city, bumped into a primary school teacher I had, and I recognised her. I said, oh, and she recognised me, and she goes, oh, Anthony, and we stopped and had a chat, introduced to my other half, and talking about life and stuff, and she goes to, she said, oh, he's such a lovely young boy. The only thing we could never get him to concentrate, he was always daydreaming. And it was like, you know, and she was in my first couple of grades, you know, so that's, you know, one of those things you go, the signs were there, but it just wasn't picked up on.
So that was your ADHD, is that correct?
Yeah. This is only a new discovery for me. Like I went through life, and I just kind of putting out spot fires of different things, you know, and trying to, and what we're talking about today is a bit of coping strategies. And, you know, a lot of my life was trying to put out the fires of symptoms, and, you know, in unhealthy, and end up in unhealthy. I was always a heavy drinker, always wasn't great at relationships or romantic relationships. And I just couldn't get it make work. And these are always like to cover things up. I didn't feel worthy and accepted. So I looked for places that I would feel worthy and accepted, you know. I didn't.
And what were they, out of curiosity? Like,
what were my strategies?
Well, no, like you said, you would try and find places that were. And I, you know, because I had, you know, big drinking problems, and it was like, and you don't realize it at the time, but like you're trying to go to places where you're accepted, and it's like, okay, well, I'll go to a place where other people are drinking, and they'll accept me because they'll be drinking as well, or whatever that was. And it was actually very unhealthy.
Yeah. I think you're exactly right. And the places for me, like my dad, as I said, my dad was a drinker. And so when him and mum separated, when I was at his place, I grew up in the pub, you know. And so what did I see? My model of what a bloke was like and how he dealt with his life was he was drinking, and he was womanizing, and he was, you know, all these kind of things. And so they're the kind of people that I was around, and, you know, mum was doing her best to kind of, you know, keep me on the right track. But you know, where would you rather be as a teenager boy? Would you rather be at home sitting with your mum, or down the pub with your dad, walking the streets and hanging out? You know, and that was me, you know, up to no good. So, you know, that was kind of what I got from that, you know, at that age. Dad was a good fella and had a lot of friends, but he, you know, wasn't, you know, that was the kind of things that I saw.
But, you know, I don't know if it's the same with you, but at that time, you know, and if I think back to when I was younger and, you know, really getting introduced to a lot of that stuff, you don't see it as a problem back in those days.
No.
You know, the people who struggle with that stuff, right? That's not you. That's other people. Do you know what I mean? That's what you're thinking in your head, you know, and then you start to see that, you know, especially like some of the stuff that I had going on, it's like, oh, hang on, what what I'm dealing with, actually a lot of other people aren't like this. You know what I mean? They don't get blackout drunk every weekend and all of that type of stuff. And that's where you start to go, oh my God, this is a problem.
Yeah, and I think I was surrounding myself with people that were the same. You know, you're looking for places of belonging, and for me, I was a muso, so I was playing all the time, and you know, we'd be touring, so you'd pull into a town and play one night, and that might be everyone you bump into. That's their night of the week partying, but then you're on to another place the next night, and that's their one night of the week. But every night of the week is your night of the week that you're partying. You know?
And sometimes you're getting paid in alcohol as well.
Yeah.
You know, you're getting your rider, you're getting all of that type of stuff. So, you know, it's like you can't, and it almost as well, right? Like, say, like a lot of these big famous rock stars, we see that, you know, some of them into their 60s or whatever are in and out of rehab and all of that stuff because you just can't escape that lifestyle.
Yeah. For me, like, I remember I never thought it was a problem. You know what I mean? In hindsight, I go, yeah, I was just wasting my time, and you know, the things that I went through after that is that, you know, the guilt and the shame that comes with that after what you see as a wasted life or wasted this, and it's just really made me think. It wasn't till much later that I actually reevaluated that time, like, because it got worse, you know, like, because like anything, if you don't deal with it, you're just throwing band-aids over the same issues, not dealing with the issues. Also, you know, your relationship problems that come with it, your, you know, inability to stay connected or to stay focused, you know, all these kind of things that play into it. And then eventually one thing or the other, and then there was other substances that got involved. And so, you know, I was, you know, all this kind of led to a point from the time I started using meth or other substances through to the time I lost everything was only about 4 or 5 years, you know. Like I went, I remember one time we'd moved to the Port this stage because I thought I've got to get away from my hometown to get better, to get away. And we moved to the Port, of all places, and anyone else in Port Adelaide, it's probably not where you moved to get away.
So, yeah, for those people who don't know, like Port Adelaide, like it used to be quite a rough area. Yeah. It's actually quite upmarket now, I'm assuming. I haven't been there for years, but I'm assuming someone who wants to, probably back when you moved there, who wanted to get clean, probably not the best move.
Not the best move. And the problem is, and you know, they always say, you know, what is it? You can't run away from problems because you're still there when you get there. And you know, I just met up with the same crowd, and that I, you know, and just continued on my merry way. And you know, and
it's funny how you attract them.
Oh yeah.
Do you know you don't have a sign on your back going, "Hey, look, I'm this and that," because I remember it was sort of a similar type of situation for me when I moved to the UK. I had broken up with a long-term girlfriend. I was like, you know, and even back when I was with her, there was a lot of drinking, drugs, whatever, right? And I was like, I really want to get away from all of this stuff. I remember getting over there. And then I remember, like, it was probably, 6 months into me being over there. I'm like, oh my God, all I'm doing is attracting the exact same people, just in a different country, who I was trying to get away from back in the day, right? And
same people with a different accent.
Yeah. Well, some of them were Australian, but yeah, some of them were from other countries and all of that. And you know, but the thing was, I did learn a lot about myself. I did go over there to try and refine myself in that. But I think that was one of the things which was an eye-opener. It was like, holy crap, man, you've moved all of this way and you've found the exact same people that you're trying to get away from.
Yeah.
Is that a problem? You know, so it was little things like that. You know, well, you've never really had a career. You really should build a career. You know, it was all of those types of things that I really learned when I was over there. So there were some positives, but there's a lot of negativity there as well.
I think still build skills and you still build lived experience, whatever you do. You know, like I look at where I'm at now, and there's some stuff that I picked up along the way in random kind of jobs, random kind of situations that I find myself relying on all the time, or that play into the skills that have me doing what I'm doing now. But it was like the catalyst to change for me was around exactly that. I remember, my relationship at the time, which is my ex, was on again, off again. It was just, toxic kind of situation. We had one kid and I had a stepson at the time. I just got up one morning and looked in the mirror and I was like, who the heck are you? Like you had every opportunity at your feet. You had all the advantages that you would want as a person. How did you end up here? You're smoking crack out of a light bulb, and you've lost everything you own. It's like, what the heck is going on? How does someone that has every opportunity still end up this way? And there was a lot of just naturally bad choices, but there was a lot of messaging that I'd internalized, and a lot of those poor coping strategies, like emotional regulation was non-existent, unable to maintain normalcy or jobs. Like I was lucky. I found patches through that time where I was able to find jobs that suited me. They were different every day, or I was my own boss, or these things that kind of supported that. But I didn't take advantage of it because I was like, the spare time I had, I was off touring and drinking and taking drugs. So that was the catalyst for me. I was just like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be this person anymore. And trying to work out who you are without it is the next biggest challenge.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think what the turning, like for me, like, because I don't think like, say for example, right, when people I don't know, let's say you see someone and you're like, or society will see a certain type of person, right? And they're like, you got to get off this stuff, you loser, or whatever, right? Not saying that you and I go around doing that, but what society would probably be doing, right? And I don't think people actually understand how difficult it is to actually it's like giving up smoking. Yeah. Right? Not that I smoke, but I'm imagining that, well, I've had to give up other stuff, and that was the challenging part. It's hard to see that the people you're around are the ones that why you can't give up, because what I would sort of find was that I'd be trying to give up on stuff and I'd be feeling like crap. And my mate would be like, look, come around, mate, and then, give me a cone, or here, have a beer, where what I needed was actually none of that, and you can't see that and you think, but these are good people, and they are good people. I'm not saying that they're bad people, but like they just weren't good for me and the direction I wanted to go into. I think the biggest turning point for me was definitely getting into business. Because I remember going to a talk, and I remember Mark Boris, the guy who was on the Celebrity Apprentice, right? He got up and talked, right? He's like, look, if you want to build a business, it's hard work. If you want to go and party and take drugs and all that, this isn't for you. You've got to be focused. And I remember leaving that, just feeling full of energy, like, wow, that was amazing. I've really got to make some changes. Then I went back to my house and we're having a party that night, and people are like smoking crack and doing like, like the soda bowl. Are they the icing things where you get high off those things? And people were doing all that crap. And I'm just thinking, I've just come from something so life-changing to this. Yeah. And then the next week I moved out. I was like, nah. And that was my turning point there. It sometimes just takes something like that. And
did you have your diagnosis at this stage? Did you know about the...
No. Well, I knew I was dyslexic, but I didn't know. I only found out I was ADHD about 2 years ago or something.
Yeah.
So no, I had no idea. And it made a hell of a lot of sense. I think I'm just trying to think, like, because, like, I think the hardest thing for me to kick was alcohol. Or,
Okay.
like, I don't know about you, but all the other drugs were heaps easy to get rid of. But the alcohol, that was the hard part because, like, I don't know, it's everywhere. And you can
Yeah.
just get it whenever you
It's
want.
normalized, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
normalized,
yeah. Yeah, it's not like it's a problem,
Yeah.
but now I can actually have a drink, which I really like. I can have a drink and not be like
Mentally
legless. I
black
know
out.
when to stop, I know when to stop. And I love that.
Yeah.
I love that I'm able to control it. It doesn't control me, if that makes sense. But I've actually just had someone message through from
Yeah.
Shane. I can't pronounce. I know Shane. Shane's a
Shane
legend.
Finn?
Yeah, Shane Finn. I was thinking Flynn, but Finn. Yeah. I was reminded of the words of motivational speaker Jim Robin just last week. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you very much, Shane, for sharing that.
It is true. Like you like, and I wonder. It almost works the other way too, doesn't it? Like we were saying before, I was almost looking for I was almost looking for people to justify my behaviour or what was going on for me,
Mm-hmm.
So I reckon the same street. Like I always said, my young people, when you go with your parent, you say, "Oh, be careful you're looking after, and you worry about the kids they hang around with." But sometimes it's more of a symptom than it is a cause too, isn't it?
Totally.
But I agree that what he was saying about community or those people you put around. Like when I got sober and clean, I went cold turkey on everything: smoking, drinking, meth. Dropped the lot. Had a couple of relapses, but pretty much from the go. And I look back and I go, well, what was different that time, or what was it? And I now look back and I go, the things that I had around me at the time addressed some of those key areas around, and this is for me, around some of those negative messaging and the symptoms of my ADHD or the vulnerabilities of my ADHD. So it was supporting those things or meeting those needs that I didn't even know I had. And it's not now until post understanding how I function and my differences, I go, oh, that's why I thrived in those situations, and that's why I'm most vulnerable in other situations. Like it was a huge light bulb.
It's true, because I remember when I got diagnosed, I'd be in the shops and I'm like, oh, I'm so frustrated, so busy, and I'm like, now I know why I feel like this, so maybe I shouldn't be going to the shop at this time, or maybe, I was able to cope with it a lot better. And it was sort of like, now I know why I feel. And don't get me wrong, I still have issues, but like I'm able to handle them a lot better. But look, in saying that, we might just move forward because,
sure.
I want to know a little bit about the work you're doing. So, you've done all that. You had this very interesting life, from what we've spoken so far. How do you get into what? And look, I think from what you've described, you'd be the perfect person for this job. But what is your job, and what do you do?
So we look after Mission Australia. I'm not sure. Some people may know who we are or not, but we're a non-for-profit organisation. Our mission is to end homelessness and meet human need, and so everything we do is around that. In South Australia, where I'm from, like I said, I look after AOD and mental health or coexisting illness programs. So coexisting is like when there's two or more things going on. And so we run programs that are government funded, so they're free to access for people, where they come in and get support with what they need. And, my role now is to look after the contracts and the program managers and look for opportunities for us to meet, look for gaps and needs, such as the one we're in, for people that are neurodivergent, particularly ADHD, there's a lot of statistics around about how we are more likely or more vulnerable to having a substance misuse disorder. Got a couple of pretty cool stats here that I wanted to share.
Yeah, share them away, mate.
There's been a few studies around it. One most recently was done in New Zealand, so they're pretty comparable. But
no, totally.
So what have we got here? Substance use disorder. So 1 in 5 individuals with a substance use disorder, so that's a diagnosed substance use disorder, have ADHD. So that's 1 in 5, which is astronomical.
That's pretty high.
Yeah. Twice as likely. Sorry, let me say that. Twice as likely than those that are neurotypical. So 50% is more likely. Twice as likely. 200% more likely. 45% of illicit stimulant users have ADHD, but only a fraction of them are formally diagnosed, which I thought was another number that was.
What was that again? Sorry, what was the?
45% of illicit stimulant users. So stimulants,
wow, that is quite
meth,
high.
Speed, crack, have ADHD, but only a fraction are diagnosed.
So that could be higher.
Yeah, it could be. People with ASD are less likely to use substances, but if they do, they face higher risks. So there's more detrimental effects to people with autism or ASD.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and then there's some other stuff around.
Where did you get these stats from, out of curiosity?
Things come across my desk all the time because I'm involved in. This is part of my work,
Yeah,
and especially now, like I'm a bit of a rag, a bull with a what is it? Bull to a red rag, whatever it is. So when it's something comes across,
it's something like that, man. Yeah.
All mixed metaphors. I'm the mixed metaphors.
Yeah.
So lived experience. Like one of my other roles is I'm on the board for LELAN, which is a lived experience leadership and advocacy network. So that's the peak body in South Australia for peer work and lived experience. So I'm involved in a lot of conversations like this, and at my level as an area manager, I get invited to a lot of these things, and a lot of these papers come across my desk. And so we're with the Mental Health Coalition of South Australia and all these other things. So these things come across quite often. And there was also another one that talked about people with ADHD, just around general mental health, and suicidal ideation and suicidal behaviour are 5 times more likely, which is just astronomical. And so I think this is just a huge unmet need that needs to be addressed. The other thing that's also interesting was that came out of the New Zealand study, that 44% of adults with ADHD that with a substance use disorder, after diagnosis and treatment of their ADHD, had improvements in their AOD use. So without even addressing their AOD use, just addressing the ADHD or the neurodivergence, 44% of them showed an improvement, which I think...
that is interesting. That is interesting, because I do believe that, I still struggle with depression and anxiety, but now that I'm aware of a lot of the triggers, you could probably say, I'm seeing an improvement. Like I said, I still struggle with a lot of things, but it's I am a little bit better just because I'm able to deal with that. But you know what? It's something interesting, with especially what you were talking about there, right? Yeah. Unfortunately, I've lost a fair few friends to suicide and stuff like that. And when you're in, from what I've found, especially when you're in the scenes that we've been in, it is quite common. And I often think about a lot of my friends who have, left us. I wonder if they were undiagnosed something. Yeah. Just when I look back at it now and I see a lot of maybe the symptoms were there, but we just had no idea,
I did not realise it wasn't adults weren't being diagnosed with ADHD until the early 2000s in Australia. So it wasn't a thing that they thought was present or they were looking to assess. And then in England, in the UK, and it wasn't until 2008 that they started assessing for adults for ADHD. which is generations of people that have gone unsupported. And who knows what the effects are. Look, I can't look at my life and blame everything on on an undiagnosed unsupported neurodivergence. I know that would be ridiculous and be me trying to, but it did. I look at some of the things that affected me so deeply and the things I tried to cover up. Maybe who knows? Maybe if I was supported earlier, that there might have been a better chance that I wouldn't have made those same decisions.
Yeah, but I think it's like I think it's almost like we always look at, everyone probably looks at going, oh man, I would have done so many things differently. And that's the thing. Like, I often think to myself, like back when I was like in school and that, I'm like, imagine if I had like a mentor or something like that. But I just don't know if like I would have gravitated to it. I think I might have been like, no, I don't need this crap, I don't know, I just don't know. And like I think when I look at kids these days, if I was to go and do a talk to a school or whatever and go, you need to get a mentor and stuff like that, kids are kids and they're gonna do whatever they want.
Who's this old guy? Why is he telling me he doesn't know?
Totally. And that's where it's sort of like, it's so hard to be able to see it through a young person's lens, because I was that, but I'm sure there was probably people when I was that age saying the exact same thing, and I was probably going, piss off. You know what I mean?
I think totally. Part of what you're saying there is like the neuro differences or the differences people have. So we don't know what the only way we can know about what's going on for a young person is have them tell us. So we can't that's I think the importance of lived experience, the importance of client voice in shaping the services that we have. And we have services. I look after services that are supporting people and their families from 10 up. So you got 10-year-olds coming into your service with their families. We have family workers. We have psychotherapists, AOD workers, peer workers, all these things to build around them, because they're things that we've heard help. And that's what are being fed back by the people that are accessing the program. We have quite a large client advisory group, not just us, but in every state. And currently Mission is setting up a national advisory group. So I think what you're saying is just right. It's that whole kind of, for want of a better term, decolonising of the way we do service delivery for people. You can't just go to people and say, this is what the professionals say and this is what you need, because everyone's different and everyone has different requirements. What they need is a place. We run one-on-one supports and group supports because people need that kind of community to normalise what's going on for them. Leland runs a series of groups called Alt to Sue, Alternatives to Suicide, for people that are experiencing distress, and it's a totally peer-led group that people access anonymously without worry that they're going to have emergency services called. But and their whole thing is about the VC model, which is like validation, curiosity, vulnerability, and community. And so they open up spaces where they can hear from people, they can be validated for what they're feeling. They're not made to feel that there's something wrong with their identity, because they're going, actually, I feel like that this is my only solution at the moment.
Yeah, and I will say, like, for me, getting to that point of being able to talk about stuff was incredibly difficult. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But it was I don't know if it was like a pride thing or whatever. But once, I'm very open about it now and very open about a lot of other things. But it did take me a while to get there. As a teenager, I probably would never have spoken about that stuff because, like, I don't know, I just wasn't around the right people. If I had have opened up about certain stuff to certain people back when I was younger, It could have been more like, I think I did, but people would go, look, I'll make you feel better here. Have a bong, or take this, or have a beer. And you're thinking at the time, yeah, this is great, but you don't realize that that's the problem.
Yeah, and that just, in my case, those solutions were just causing more problems in the end,
Totally. But you know what? Moving on from that, what challenges did you face in discovering healthy coping strategies? I think that flows well into what we're sort of talking about.
Yeah, my challenges. So I think what we spoke about was a lot what we're saying. Like it was never modeled for me, So it was about it was never modeled for me. So it's stuff you had to work out yourself. And people don't get to our age with these things by accident. So you learn, what is it? Need breeds creativity. You create these kind of coping strategies to get you through, and some are healthy and some aren't. So there's a bit of trial and error there. But for some of us, the lure or the quick fix of an unhealthy coping strategy is too hard to avoid. That's what I'd say that's what I'd say for me. And then it's the embarrassment and the shame that comes with it. Would just keep doing that. And now I'm sober. I'm not. These things are still there that I need to work through, like my coping strategies that keep me healthy when I was a frontline worker and working with people that you're exposed to vicarious trauma and all these kind of things that are happening all the time. I know when I'm not doing well. For me, I'll just take on more and more stuff. I'm a huge people pleaser. I have, RSD is like rejection sensory dysphoria.
Yeah, that's it.
Is driven most of my life, So it was. I need to be careful of those things, and I think the last few years, even before understanding my ADHD, I was better aware of them, and I'd naturally learnt. Like I said, you get to this age not by accident. So I've become successful in my position. Because I'd already established these things. So now with my understanding of my divergence, it's like, that's why that's helpful, which might have been a few shortcuts before, but at least I know the strategies that I've got in place work for me, and so.
And can you actually see, you were talking about how relationships were a bit of an issue for you back in the day and all of that. And look, I was the same. And I look at some of the people I was in relationships with, and we were just fueling that fire. Do you know what I mean? Like there'd be times where I'm just trying to, let's say sometimes with my ADHD, I just need to chill and, I just can't be forced to, and then someone would be like, no, we've got to do this now. And, just having to work against that was the problem within itself. And I look back at it now and I'm like, yes, that was the issue right there. Do you look at that back in your past, especially relationships and all that, and you're like, oh my God, I can see how we really didn't work well together. Or you may even go, I think that person might have been ADHD themselves.
My partner says I always either diagnosing other people, her included, which she's not super happy about.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you say that because, I don't know, there's been a lot of times for myself, especially working in this space, I'm able to go, I'm pretty sure that person's this. I'm pretty sure that person's that. Yeah. And before you know it, they've gotten a diagnosis and they are. And I'm like, told yous.
Yeah, told you.
It's like we've got a radar.
I was going to say one of the things a couple of things that really kind of were eye-openers for me in relationship. There was one, and this happened more than one relationship. When I was, I get you go out and you're so supportive and you've got so much grace and so caring for other people. You get home and you've got nothing left for me or for, you know. And I'm like, and I railed against that all the time. But when it comes up that many times, you've got to go, maybe there's some truth to that. And now I know that it's because I spent my time masking and you know, it's hard work to engage with people. And I'm a people person, but it's still hard work. I get home and after work, and so then to be a parent, a husband, or a partner, or you know, sometimes you know, I really need. Now I'm aware of it. I go, okay, I can feel that, and I can be aware of it. And the kids too. Like my oldest, you know, the only way I found it, only way I pursued this was, and I know from listening now that it's other people's story too, was my oldest is both gender and neurodiverse. And so it was through getting attending support with them that I actually went, oh, hold on. And it was pointed to me. He said, did you ever consider that this might be, okay. And so that journey with them, and now with my second youngest, is also is also pursuing some sort of assessment. So it's like, okay, I'm really aware of that. That's what it is, you know. And my oldest was going, even like my partner with a relationship, my kids are going, hey, Dad, we come in after you come home from work and I want to tell you something I'm really excited about. And it's like you don't care. It's like you're not interested, or you zone out, or I'll be halfway through a conversation and I'll start thinking about something else, and, you know, a work thing or a, you know, maintaining conversation is one of my biggest challenges. Like
it's so funny.
Go,
well, it's so funny. Like my wife will say to me sometimes, she'll be like, "Well, you'll be sitting there, but you're, it's like you're off in another planet." And it's like, but for me, it's, and like probably to her is probably thinking she's probably thinking I don't care or whatever.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I do care. It's just I'm focusing on something else right at that point of time. And I'm like, to tell you the truth, it's not that I'm ignoring. It's like my brain is going a million miles an hour about something. It could be business. It could be something that I'm working on. And that's consuming my mind at that point of time, that it's so hard to almost break away from that and then be like, okay, you've got my attention. You know what I mean?
I got that. And also, like, for part of it, sometimes my brain she'll go, honey, or Tuck, or someone will call Dad, and I'll go, and for my brain it goes, okay, you've done that task now, and it'll switch over to something else. And go, I said yes, but I didn't listen to anything else they said.
Yeah.
You know? And then, you know, they, like I said to you, both those incidents it's like you don't care, or it's like you're not interested, or you don't value us. It's like that couldn't be further from the truth. Like the people in my life I love so deeply, and so when they say that, then the RSD kicks in, and I just feel like horrible and terrible.
And it's almost like you think, but it's not that at all. Like it's hard to explain almost. It's like, but I really do care. And sometimes that's really hard to sort of explain within itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it is true. And I think the benefit of God, or the upside of God, is the kids have their own kind of diversities going on as well. And my partner works in mental health as well. So there's understanding there, but it still doesn't mean it's not hard for them, the people you live with and that love you, to go, because they just want, they got their own needs and they want something from you, and it's, you know.
Totally. So, but how do you reckon, so how does neurodivergence affect developing coping mechanisms, do you reckon? So, you know, I don't know, what are your thoughts?
Well, so as in when you're neurodivergence.
Well, the thing is, the way, and I'll word it a little bit differently. So, you know, maybe it could be like, because we're we get so sidetracked with things. And actually, I'll give you an example. So I remember when I first got into business, right? I was like, man, I want to make it big. I've got to make this happen, right? And I was like, yeah, my ADHD mind, I'm going to be brilliant. Hyper-focused to the max, right?
Yeah.
And I was that hyper-focused that I was working from like 7 o'clock in the morning till like 3 o'clock in the morning, the next morning, having a short sleep. Haven't stopped to sleep. Had to go to the 24-hour shop down the road to get something to eat, come home, have a bit of sleep, get up, do that for even on the weekend. I was like, yep, I've got this. I'm a machine, and then boom, I had a breakdown. And, I've had that happen twice now for similar types of things. And it's like, holy crap, I can now see that, but it took that to happen for me to go, oh my God, now I know, you know what? I'm going to sit on the couch and watch episode after episode of whatever show I'm watching, and that's good, Where back in the day I would have been like, man, I'm a lazy slob. I should be working on my business, but I'm here watching TV. But for me, that's great.
Yeah. I think that's exactly right, and that's my experience too. I'll sit here and or in the office, and I'll just work until I have to set myself reminders on the phone. Eat, drink, drink some water.
Actually, that reminds me. Might have some water. Thanks for the reminder, mate.
I think all those kind of things that happen to you, that hyperfocus is a big one for me too. Like I just get stuck in the zone, and I'll take on. For me, it was multiple times in my life I've been verging on burnout because I feel like I said before, I just take more and more things on because I feel like I need to prove myself. I feel like I need to be valued. Avoid the rejection, be accepted. Fear, even in workplace, like am I doing enough? You get a bit of imposter syndrome thrown in on top. You go, crap, why have they given me the keys to this place? Why,
why do I deserve this?
Yeah, or you feel really responsible, like for dozens of employees that are responsible. Like if this contract falls over, their livelihoods at stake. So you have all this things. So you go, man, I've got to zone in here, and I can. It doesn't take me too much. I can procrastinate a little bit, normally on things other than work. Like, they'll be the things that I normally enjoy that fill my cup. Playing guitar or other things that I enjoy doing. They're the things I'll procrastinate because I've just burnt myself out in trying to meet all the needs. So I think trying to meet other people's needs and take other things. I think that's what did affect my coping mechanisms.
Yeah, so that's interesting.
And I don't think I'm not 100% on top of it, but I'm better than I was. And I engage in, I told you before, I had an EAP appointment today because I just need to check in, have someone check in on me every now and again and just say, how you going? What are you doing? And those things are, I'm so...
It's helpful,
Yeah. I'm like, my workplace, I'm very thankful for. They value lived experience. They value their workers. And so these things are available to us all the time. So it's, I'm very grateful for it. So I use it, I tell all my staff, use it.
Yeah, totally. And, I've had to use them in the past and even called certain especially through the pandemic and stuff like that. Just being able, because my wife, she wasn't at home the whole time because she was busy on the front line pretty much doing all the COVID testing. So she was never home. But I was home on my own the whole time in my head, put it me. So being able to just speak to people who I didn't even know, it does help. So I'm definitely really mindful of like that type of stuff. But, moving on, and I am mindful of the time. And awesome podcast, by the way. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about this, because I think it's so relevant, But what tips do you have for building functional routines to support mental health? And I think what we just spoke about in regards to speaking to people is one of them.
Yeah.
What else would you recommend?
I think community is a big one. I think you've got to have a space, like we're here having a chat for a purpose for your podcast, but like I'm going to leave this and go away with, having to talk this through again with someone, hearing your experiences. And I find that really helpful. It might not be everyone's cup of tea, but it's like, and I guess that's the next point is like, find out what's important to you. Like find out, I have lived my whole life defined by other things, whether it's trying to please other people, trying to fit in, trying to be loved, accepted, being affected by drugs and alcohol, being all these kind of other things that have gone on. I am at one stage I was getting some help, and the person said, "So what do you want? Like you've sat here for the last hour, and I've heard about your family, I've heard about your partners, I've heard about this, but what's important to you?" And I'm like, I couldn't do it. Like it led to some huge. The ability to self-reflect is way underrated, I reckon. Like it's something I try and do with our staff is like encourage people to self-reflect and take self-responsibility. And that's why another thing I think groups are really helpful for, because people can share that kind of stuff. But being able to define what your best life looks like, and I think understanding that your life is not there's no end goal, that everything's a process. You know what I mean? So
it's kind. Like it's a work in progress type of thing.
True.
It's always changing. It never goes the way you sort of plan. What's a plan?
Yeah, it's a plan. And I heard someone the other day say something, and I went, I really like that. And it says the whole recovery, the whole journey in life is, and she said, fall in love with the process of being the best version of yourself. And I thought, that it might be hoopla to anyone else, but for me, it really jumped in because I'm very goal orientated most of the time. And so being present, being able to sit with the now and the process of, even going like exercise. Oh, I can't wait till I've been able to swim extra laps, or can't wait till I've lost 10 kilos. But it's being able to go, actually, that's not important. What's important is I turned up today and I'm doing the best I can today. And I think that can flow through to your work, your relationships, anything. Just like, okay, it's a process. Like I don't have to be anything other than what I am today.
So interesting. Like, so do you work from home a lot?
Yeah, bits and pieces. Like I'm here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah, so I work from home. Like I now work from home more than I've ever worked from home ever. Do you know what I mean? And for me, I'm a people person, so I really enjoyed being in the office and talking to people or whatever like that. I'd get more done at home than what I would at the office because I was probably talking. But, I've noticed how impactful working at home has been on my mental health, and maybe in a negative way. Because like I don't have those people that I can talk. So, for example, when you and I had a chat the other day, that was great because it sort of is like, okay, I've got to talk with Tuck, and I'm sort of finding other coping strategies to sort of deal with that now. But it's definitely been a hard road, but I think this is another thing too. This is the way of work these days. A lot of people are working from home, so you're talking about routine and just fronting up to the pool to go for a swim. For me, it might be making sure I do have a shower before. Like I could sit in my pajamas all day if I really wanted to, but still staying in that routine of getting up, having the shower, having breakfast, sitting down, do it, having a break, your lunch, because it's so easy to just get stuck here.
Yeah, my partner's like super organized. So she's the other end of the spectrum. So she keeps me, not the spectrum, so to speak, spectrum.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Yeah.
I get what
the
you
other
mean.
end, she's vigilant and stuff. So the bed has to be made all the time. So like when we first got together, it's like, man, this is a bit of a drag, But now it's like, I feel like getting up and making the bed is something I do every day, because it's kind of like, okay, now it's moving on to the next stage. It's like, I think all those kind of little things help with that.
Yeah, it is. And for me, it's like, even doing the shopping on Friday, picking up the groceries, getting all that stuff, paying all the bills, like in regards, I don't mean like I pay all the bills, but like actually paying them, not going, hey, those are little chores for me type of thing. And I think that's what keeps me on track. It's sort of funny, like I'm very good with organizing and all that. Like, for example, our wedding, I organized everything, and everyone's like, what? Wow. So your wife did nothing? I'm like, she really isn't good with that. I was the one who organized it all. And it's just interesting how it works. But hey, Tuck, we're actually towards the end of the podcast here, man. Awesome chat. That went really fast. But, if people want to connect with you and find out a little bit more of your work, where can they go to check you out, mate?
So if you're interested in Mission Australia and the programs we do, you can go to the Mission Australia website, which is missionaustralia.org.au. So on there, you'll find that there's a find my service, and you can look at your state and see what's available for you there. And then for Lelyn, which is the Lived Experience Leadership and Advocacy Network, that's lelyn.org. Was it .au? Lelyn.org.au. And
great.
And then also, I try to stay off socials, because otherwise I'll doomsday scroll. So I'm not on socials a lot, but my email that I've got that anyone's happy to email is tuck, TUCK, 5015 @gmail.com. So happy to
cool,
have a
mate.
chat.
Hopefully you don't get a whole bunch of spam emails now. You put that out to our community, but all good, mate. Hey, Tuck, thank you. So be kind, please. He's trying to do good stuff here. Hey, Tuck, thank you so much for giving us the time to chat with me today. I really appreciate it. It's so good to just sit down with someone who, has lived a similar experience to myself. So look, thank you so much for sharing that. And yes, please, anyone, if you want to connect with Tuck, please feel free to email him. All of that. We really appreciate your time, mate.
No worries. It's been really good. And thanks to the podcast. That's how we connected. I stumbled across your podcast, and I've found some of the other interviews really, really helpful.
Just about community, right?
Yeah, it is. Sure is, my friend.
It is. Awesome. So those of you who haven't already done so, please subscribe, like, and follow to all of our social media platforms. My name's Will, and this is Neurodivergent Mates. Till next time.